I know I'm late. I've been late on a bunch of shit lately. But I got to talk about Canelo Alvarez and Caleb Plant, man. I mean, god damn. Canelo, let me start with Plant, actually, because I was really impressed with his performance. I only gave him 3 rounds, but there was not that many one-sided rounds until the last couple. It was all pretty 50-50 for the most part, and there would just be rounds where I felt like Canelo had a little bit of the cleaner work, and so, but some of them were flip coin rounds. You know what I'm saying? I thought Plant did a great job of making it difficult for Canelo to hit him upstairs. He did a great job of not setting in one place for Canelo to fire, longer combinations than 1 or 2 or 3 punches. So he kept them moving. He kept them turning. The jab was really nice, particularly at the beginning of the fight. I think he should have done that for longer. I think the jab should have been more consistent throughout the fight. Yeah, I mean, but all that being said, I don't think he ever really committed offensively enough to really get Canelo's respect. And I could see even in the 3rd round, his jab output went way down and Canelo's pressure went way up. And you could almost see all right, it's not an ass whooping right now, but I can kind of get a sense of where this is going. And then that's exactly where it went, with Canelo putting him out in the 11th round. But he showed a lot of heart. He wanted to continue. He was trying to get up, and but he just happened to run into the best fighter of his generation that's in his fucking peak right now. And as far as Canelo's performance, man, what's really amazing about him is he can see, he just reads what you're doing as he goes along. Like all the great technicians, you know what I'm saying? He's just reading what you're doing as he goes along. He's taking notes as he goes along, and he's getting better as the fight goes. Whereas a lot of fighters are depleting. I mean, that was always my criticism of Caleb Plant as he fades down the stretch of fights. I don't even really know if that's what happened here. I think what happened was Canelo could see that it was going to be tricky to hit Plant upstairs regularly, and so he just started punishing the body, and the more he punished the body, the smaller the ring got for Plant. You know what I mean? There was just less and less places for him to hide, and that he just broke him down slowly. And then what's also incredible about him is if he was just a bulldozer kind of guy, Plant would pick him off. But he's so good defensively himself. And then even when you do land, he's got an iron chin where, you're not really going to buzz this guy. So it's too complete a package, for just a great fighter to handle. You got to be another all-time great, I think, to beat this guy. I think Canelo is working on being, and I say this every time he fights, I just think that he's working on being a really special fighter. It wasn't that long ago, he was a middleweight and then made a stop at light heavyweight and then was like, all right, I'm going to unify and be undisputed in the division. And we just watched him peck these guys off one by one. You know what I mean? It's been pretty incredible to watch. Beating, Callum Smith, beating Billy Joe Saunders, beating Caleb Plant. I mean, he's beaten the very top guys of this weight class. You know what I mean? In their primes. It's an impressive run. It's a historic run, I think, and he's the cash fight in boxing right now. You know what I mean? He's the Floyd fight of his generation. And I think he has, because of his ability to change weight classes, and Floyd had a little of this too, but I think Canelo has even more, his ability to change weight classes and maintain his skills and his power open up so much for him. You know what I'm saying? I think that if he's going to stay at super middleweight, Benavidez is kind of the only fight that matters or is really any fun. He's basically cleaned out the top of the division. I'm not that interested in seeing him fight Anthony Durrell or somebody in that next tier down just to fight challengers. I think there's more interesting fighters that he hasn't fought at middleweight. Obviously, the Jermall Charlo fight seems to be something that people are talking about. Charlo's a big guy, but he's never fought at super middleweight, and I don't think he's got the chops to hang with Canelo. That's just my opinion. Especially having seen how he's handled, first of all, how he looked in his last fight, and then also the way he handled the pressure from Derevyanchenko. You know, I thought he clearly won, but he spent a lot of that fight with his back on the ropes, just kind of picking shots off. And if he gets into that mode against Canelo, he's definitely going to get knocked out. So, and I don't think he's at that level, but I think it's a good fight and it's marketable, you know, and Charlo will sell the fuck out of it. So I think the Charlo fight is interesting. I think a third fight with Golovkin is something that I would still like to see. You know, I just think that stylistically they're kind of made for each other. And I know that Canelo has gotten better since that and bigger. But I don't know that Golovkin has gone through this great decline the way people talk about. Like, you know, I'm not saying he's 2014 Triple G, but I mean, go back and watch his last fight after the Derevyanchenko fight. His skills look good. You know, his last couple fights, I thought he looked really sharp. It's going to be interesting to see how he looks against Murata. If he's still Golovkin, he's going to dominate Murata. And I expect him to dominate Murata. You know, I think that him and Canelo is a trilogy worth finishing. It's way more worth finishing than Fury and Wilder. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's way less worthy trilogies that have happened. I think this is one that they got to do. I've always kind of been in that camp. I went through a period of being less interested in that, but I think the more he just cleans all these guys out and makes it look easy, you know, the more I'm impressed with how Golovkin fought him. Because I don't think, you know, obviously the Floyd loss, but and the Lara fight. But since there's very few fights that Canelo's had that were that physical, you know, where he really couldn't get a guy off him and where it was really mano a mano. I just think that it's worthy. It's a worthy trilogy. And if he's not going to do any of those, right? I also think a rematch with Lara would be interesting, but that's never going to happen. I think what would really be an interesting fight that people are kind of sleeping on is potentially moving up to light heavyweight and trying to get undisputed at 175. You got Arthur Beterbiev, you got Dmitry Bivol. You know, maybe fighting the winner of Beterbiev and Marcus Brown. You know, there's other guys at light heavyweight like Gilberto Ramirez, Zurdo Ramirez. You know, I don't know who he's beaten to deserve that, but I think as far as him being a young, in his prime, undefeated Mexican fighter, big, tall, long, strong guy, you know, I think that's an interesting matchup. I think potentially his length and his power could throw Canelo for a loop a little bit when he gets up there with guys that big, you know, that maybe have a little more juice left in their game than Kovalev. You know, I think that particularly Ramirez with the hand speed, I think that could be a really interesting fight. And then, man, I read that a rumor that he's potentially moving up to cruiserweight to fight Makabu. I was like, what? you know, it's very impressive if he's actually going to move up to cruiserweight. But what I would hope is that he continues to fight guys at their best, the best guys at their weight. You know what I'm saying? In their primes, and that it's not just about like, I'm not even really sure what I'm trying to say right now. I hope he's not just going after belts, you know, and he's looking at the landscape of who's really out there and who's the toughest fights. And I think Beterbiev and Bivol are very obviously the two toughest fights for him to take right now. The last one I'll talk about is Benavidez, because I talked more about it before. You know, I think a lot of how that fight turns out depends on the weight they do it. I kind of hope they do it at 175, because I would love to see Benavidez like with a little less of a weight cut on him, where he's just a little stronger. I think that's going to open up his power big time. And I think it'll make a fight with Canelo a little bit more interesting. So he's just got so many fucking options, and I can't really think of a fight where I'm not confident that he's going to win. You know what I mean? Like, all of these guys, I'm like, dude, I mean, good fighters, but are they going to beat Canelo? You know, Beterbiev, like, I've said that multiple times. I think that's a tough fight. That's a tough fight. Any way you cut it up, that's a tough fight. So we'll see what he does next, man. I mean, at this point, now that I've heard the cruiserweight shit, I'm like, I don't know what the fuck he's going to do. He's going to do whatever he feels like, because he's the man right now. You know what I'm saying? And to be honest with you, if you don't have him number one pound for pound, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Like, this guy's the best fighter in the world right now. For sure, for sure. And part of how I know that is who he's beating. He's beating the top guys of this weight. He's beating the top guys of his era. You know what I'm saying? And I was really impressed, man. I was really impressed. I'm always impressed. Every time I see Canelo fight, it feels a lot like a Pacquiao fight. Nowadays, when Canelo fights, it feels a lot like a Pacquiao fight, like 10 years ago. Because every time you would watch a Pacquiao fight, you would have this overwhelming feeling that, like, I'm really watching something special right now. You know, when you would watch him fight these guys that were so much bigger than him. And Canelo pretty consistently fights guys that are quite a bit bigger than him. You know, there was the same deal with Manny. I think that's just an indication of how Canelo is the man of his era. A fantasy fight of mine for him would be him and Errol at 160. I know that Errol's a lot smaller, but he's a big, long guy that could fill into 160 no problem. If Canelo could still make 160, I doubt he can. But that's just like if I'm putting a fantasy fight together, I think that would be a really easy sell too. Like, I think people would really gobble that fight up. And I think sometimes you got to have a little fucking chutzpah, dude. I mean, Amir Khan did it. I'd much rather see Errol Spence do it than Amir Khan do it. You know what I'm saying? No disrespect to Amir Khan's skills, but Spence is just a big, durable welterweight. And if Canelo can drop 8 more pounds and Spence can fill out, I think that's a slept-on matchup. I think that's a slept-on matchup.